Last week I kitbashed this Clan Moulder kill team, or at least the first part of it. Some basic rats, some mutants and some torments. This week I'm kitbashing 5 specialists and I'm getting help from Andy from the Glass Half Dead kill team channel. He's going to explain to me what exactly these models are supposed to do.
You've got the Cult Demigod. This is your leader and it's all about rousing the rabble, if you want to phrase it that way. Perfectly decent in both melee and shooting, but really they're there to make your little dudes do more.
Well, the leader of this Clan Moulder kill team is of course going to be a Master Moulder. So I'm just going to assemble this guy for a bit and then I'm going to see if I can get some 40k bits to make him look a bit more like 40k and less like Age of Sigmar. So take a look. I have assembled this body and this staff I'm definitely going to use. That one goes over here. It needs a little bit more 40k pieces, but like Andy said, this model is there to encourage the others. So a staff like that will help. But on the other side, there is supposed to be this arm over here with the tiny Skaven rat, the actual Moulder, the Master Moulder. I mean, Skaven players, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that that guy is the Master Moulder and this guy is just one of his experiments. Now, I think if I just leave all of this off and I just say this model is the Master Moulder, I got a nice big socket over here where I can add a big gun. And for the gun, I'm going to the Cataphront Breachers box. They got this nice flamethrower that they have on the, and it's on the right side as well. But you know, a flamethrower, I was thinking like, how could this Master Moulder encourage other Skaven from his clan at a range? Well, it doesn't have to be an actual flamethrower. It could be something spreading poisonous gas or something like that, like a spew of warp vapor, something like that to at range make his guys mutate into mutants and torments and so on. So I think flamethrower makes sense, but they also got a couple of nice pieces like this over here, some weird, I don't know, sort of almost tentacles, like mechanical tentacles that might fit on that shoulder too. And this piece over here. I'm not 100% sure that this comes from the Cataphront Breaches because it comes from that box, but I don't know if I put it there correctly. But this looks like something you can, you know, operate with. There's a little drill on there, there's a clamp on there to stabilize the patient you're working on, and I think I can fit this on his back as well. So I'm just gonna dry fit this here with some poster putty and see if the model works like this. So I'm just gonna add this flamer over here and I'm gonna give him the same pose as he has with the original model, so kind of pointing down, kind of out of the way. That way you also have a nice view of the model if he's standing there with his staff like this, you know, from this side. Now I think this thing over here could fit up there, kind of like a shoulder pad, like an addition over here. I think that works cool. That works, yeah. And then this piece. Now, a while ago I made my pain boss, an orc pain boy that grew into his own pain boss. And there again, I used lots of Skaven bits. And I'm gonna do kind of the same thing. And I feel like I'm cheating, I'm not being very creative, but it just works really well. You see that ball over here? That should hold whatever weird gas. I can put this right on there and make it look like it's coming out of there and it's supposed to be there. So I'm just gonna clip off this little stand here, clean it up, and then I'm just gonna dry fit this sort of, I don't know, operating arm, apothecary arm over here, like that. And then if his arm with the staff goes here, I need to make sure this all fits and doesn't get in the way of each other. Let me see, this thing goes there. So I think I have to change the orientation of this arm. It has to go more like that maybe. See, now we've got a Skaven apothecary, you know, with these weird operating things sticking out. I think this is starting to look pretty good. I can fix this with green stuff over there, that socket, and this one over here as well. I just think he needs, I don't know, he needs something else. A backpack, that's what he needs, because this is the problem. He has 40k in the front, Age of Sigmar in the back. And I think I can fit a nice AdMac backpack right there. I got one here. This one will do. I've just got to cut off this tail. I think it's like some filtration device. And I think I need to get rid of this as well. And then let's see if I can fit it with that antenna. Yeah, like that. This is going to work. Just a little poster putty. And I got my Master Moulder pretty much ready to start gluing him together. I mean, the backpack adds a lot from this side, from the back, because this still looks a little bit too much like Age of Sigmar. I think I might have to add some chains or some cables, some wirings going from the backpack into the staff, like it's powering the staff. I like the apothecary arm. That one's going to do a lot of work here. And I also already see that they have these open mouths. I could put a little bit of chunk of warpstone in there, like I have like these guys over here. You know, he has warpstone sticking out of his neck. Of course, the Master Moulder needs to have some warpstone to implement, to inject into his specimens as well. So I think that's a perfect fit. I can add little pieces over there, maybe something hanging off his backpack or off his belt or something like that. I think I just need to get started with the green stuff, get everything together, get it to a point where I'm happy with how it looks, and then start adding the little details. And while I've got my green stuff out, you know, I got this really big glob over here to make the shoulder work. I cut a little piece of the sprue, so of the rest of the sprue, and I'm just gonna carve this into a little bit of a warpstone and stick it in there. That's how I did it with my mutants and my torments, those big guys over there. Anywhere where a mutation, you know, or something nasty is growing, there's a little piece of warpstone in there to signify that this comes from the warpstone. So I'm gonna do the same with this Master Moulder, and I might add another piece of this here or there on his back, just to have a couple of nice focal points on the mini as well. So I'm just going to sculpt the flesh around it, and then I think it's time for the next specialist.
You've then got 2 blessed blades, little bit of armor, huge weapons, really good at chopping things up. And super unique for kilting, they kind of work in tandem. Normally you can only activate one model at a time. With the blessed blades, they activate alongside each other. Very cool.
Right, so my mind immediately goes to a couple of bodyguards for the Master Moulder. Now, it would be very easy to just grab a couple of these storm vermin. They got some armor, big halberds, big weapons, exactly as Andy says. But I think that's a little bit too easy. And instead, what if I could make 2 Skaven sort of failed experiments where the Master Moulder tried to make something, but it didn't really work out the way it should. So I got half a storm vermin right here with a decent part of the chest plate of this storm vermin, and I got half a clan rat. And so my idea is that the clan rat got some weird stone, some warp stone implanted, and half of him is growing properly and the other half is mutating in the wrong direction and getting weird, nasty mutations. So I'm just gonna see if I can get these 2 together with a big glob of green stuff in the center, just like so. Just squeeze it in there. It's okay if there are big gaps, that just gives me opportunity to sculpt in some flesh that's bursting out of the armor, and also gives me opportunity to implant some of the weird stone bits and pieces. Now here at the back, all I gotta do is just flatten that, like so, just scrape it flat, and I think this could be a nice spot for some of the weird stone, the warp stone as well. Just gonna see if I can fill up these gaps, and then of course, this kind of normal Skaven arm needs to go. Oh, there it goes. And I'm going to replace it with this mutated arm that comes from the actual Chaos Cultist, the Accursed Cultist box that this kill team is supposed to represent the proxy. So I'm just smoothing this out, a little bit of green stuff, actually quite a lot of green stuff, and I'm just going to stick this in there and make it look like it's at a weird angle pointing down, like there's something seriously wrong inside this poor Skaven. And he's suffering from these mutations. And again, since I have this glob of green stuff, a little bit of warpstone in there, and I'm gonna add a head here under his arm, because I really want to show that these are failed experiments. I mean, I got my mutants over here, and you run the risk of confusing the 2 otherwise, but this is a proper specimen. This worked properly. He is completely mutated into a mutant, and this thing over here needs to look like it's failed with, you know, things going horribly wrong. But Andy did say big weapons, so I am going for my exalted 8-bound sprue over here. Lots of leftover weapons. Can highly recommend this if you're kitbashing cool stuff. And I'm just gonna see if I can graft this arm onto his side. Nice, a massive weapon that will really stand out on the table and, you know, make him look different from the other mutants. And I added a second head up here because it looked a little bit too empty and it looked a little bit too weird to only have this sort of neck socket over there. I'm just gonna finish with the green stuff sculpting, and then I'm gonna do the second of the 2 twin blades. And I'm basically gonna do the same thing. I got half a storm vermin over here, big glob of green stuff in there, and I'm just gonna start pressing bits of mutations into him. But I'm gonna get a bit wilder, a bit bigger mutations, maybe a little less Skaven, but a little bit more chaos, but who cares, looks cool. So I got this piece over here, no idea what this is supposed to be, but it looks nasty, so I want it. And there's this piece over here, which is supposed to be this sort of tentacle foot, and I think it can fit in nicely too. So tentacle foot here, weird, I don't know what it is over there. And then I'm just going to give him a Skaven arm, because otherwise this side doesn't look Skaven enough. So I'm just going to take some green stuff, and then I'm going to press this arm from the storm vermin. This is the musician. I'm just going to press it in here, see if I can make a bit of a shoulder socket. and just make it look like some nastiness is bursting out of this side of the Skaven. And then it definitely needs some kind of armor plating on the front. And for that, I'm using another one of these Storm Vermin chest pieces, just from a different model, so it's not going to fit properly. That's okay, I can work around this. And I can add another 8-bound weapon over here. Massive, looks cool, and immediately gives a good 40k vibe because it's a chain weapon. And it actually fits well, like I can make it look like his shoulder burst out of the shoulder pad. I still have some pieces of the actual shoulder pad of the Storm Vermin here, I might cover it up later. But I need to let this rest. The green stuff is still very pliable, very soft, and so if I press something on one side, the other side spills out. So I need to get this to just dry before I can continue with this. In the meantime, maybe I can work on the next specialist. So, Andy, what's next?
You've got your Iconarch who has a massive banner and it's all about aura. It either buffs you or debuffs the enemy.
A banner bearer. Okay, so Andy said a banner that can buff your own guys, which is pretty standard for a banner. You know, an Imperial standard in a Imperial Guard army buffs the guys around him, and a Space Marine banner buffs the guys around him. But this banner needs to be able to debuff enemies as well. So I was thinking something like a scarecrow. I'm gonna start with the banner, and I'm gonna start with this thing over here. This comes from the Plague Monk set, and I'm using this one because it's facing the enemy, the way it's carried. You know, if you have the Clan Rats or the Storm Vermin banners, they're kind of fluttering in the wind and they're pointing behind them. This one is really facing the enemy, so it could work well as a thing that you could plant and then some nastiness comes out of it. Plus, if you look at the top-down camera, I can glue this chunk on top of it, which is also from the Plague Monks kit. And it's kind of like a piece of warpstone that's sitting on top of this banner, so it fits Clan Moulder as well. Now, for the scarecrow parts, I'm going back to the Accursed Cultist. So first I've got this one over here. This is a complete mini, so I'm just going to use this one to give me a good chest piece. That is going to be the center part of this banner. I'm just going to see if I can cut off the legs here around the belt and the arms right at the shoulder, and then I can start gluing stuff together. So what I want, what I'm trying to achieve here, is a body that's basically separated into 5 pieces. So torso, arms and legs, all of them separate, but still connected somehow with tubes and hoses and piping, keeping the body alive. But this needs to be absolutely horrifying and gruesome, that if they show this to the enemy, like, this is what happens to you if you resist, if we get our hands on you. That's kind of what I want, and then it could, you know, be used to debuff your enemies, and at the same time buffs your guys as well, because hey, if you don't do what I tell you, this is how you're gonna end up as well. So let me get these arms in place right here. I got a good part of the Scarecrow banner done already. I'm just gonna see if I can free these legs off this sort of cloak that this cultist is wearing, so that I can have them separately hanging off this banner as well. So the legs are shaved to fit, and I'm just gonna put them here, one over here, and just glue them straight onto the banner. I mean, right now all of these pieces look like they're just hanging loose off this banner and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I'm gonna add chains and stuff to make it look like it's tied down there and strapped to the banner and to the banner pole. And then, like I said, I wanna see if I can make it look as if this poor cultist is still alive hanging here. Now, let me see how I fit this leg, like there. So let's let this dry, and then it's time for some cables and wires. So I got my chains, wires, barbed wire and everything here. Let's make something out of this. First, I'm gonna secure the torso to this banner, and I'm gonna use some barbed wire to go around the neck, and it fits perfectly here into these gaps. Now these ends, I'm just gonna bend them around the pole and see if I can include the arms in this binding of barbed wire as well. Beautiful. Arms and torso are now securely attached to this pole. For the legs, since they're sort of dangling down there, I want to see if I can hang them on these chains. And I'm gonna make it look like they're suspenders. So a little bit of super glue here on top of the leg, and I'm just gonna hang this chain in there and wait until the super glue dries. And then I can wrap the chain around here and hang it down, and then glue it onto that leg as well. Like so. A little bit of super glue on there. Oh, there jumped the chain. Let's see if I can get it back in place. Right there. Now I'm gonna hold this for a bit like this and hope that the super glue sets. Cool, and now I'm gonna add in some wires. This is thin wire, and I'm just gonna see if I can make it look like this body could technically still be alive by having some wires going from here, the arm socket, into the arm, and also from the torso into the legs. And this is really finicky and delicate work because these are super thin wires, and I need to get them in the right place and then make sure that the glue sets, and it's a bit of a hassle, but I think it could look really, really cool. Nice, this banner is done. And look at those cables, they go from the torso to the arms and to the legs. The legs are dangling from a set of chains, and the body and arms are strapped to there with some barbed wire. Now we need a volunteer to carry this into battle. And as a volunteer, I'm picking one of these storm vermin, but I'm gonna pick the guy that kind of looks like the sergeant, the champion of the squad, because it does make sense to me. You know, Space Marines let their ancients carry the banners. It's usually the veteran or the most experienced guy that's walking around. So having some storm vermin, not too badly mutated, you know, maybe I'll add a little bit, but not too much, and having him carry the banner makes sense to me. So let me get all these pieces together. Now I need a good arm to carry this banner, and for that I'm going for this one. This is a very, very old Beastman sprue. So, you know, old world Beastmen, maybe they'll come back and they'll have this sprue again. But this looks like a good arm with a nice straight pole to put that banner on later on. And I think it will fit with just a little bit of green stuff. It looks a bit big, but that's okay. You know, Clan Moulder, a little bit of enhancement for this guy as well. Makes sense. Now I feel he's a bit lacking in 40k flavor, so I'm going back to the Cut from Breaches kit for this arm over here. I mean, the actual Dark Commune banner bearer is just holding a little pistol, but I think this weapon could kind of be seen as an arc weapon or a beam weapon that shoots something, so I think I can get away with this, and it would instantly make him look more of a 40k model and less of an Age of Sigmar model. And look at him, banner bearer is done. I like it, a nice scarecrow banner. That's gonna scare the hell out of any opponents. Now, I need to let this dry, and just as with the twin blades, there the green stuff needs to dry, so I'm gonna leave this for now, and I'm gonna start adding more bits and pieces to make them look a little bit more 40k later on, but I'm first gonna work on the last specialist. And Andy, what's that?
Finally, you've got your Mind Witch, which has all of your magical powers. They let you throw down a kind of a warp vortex on the board, stun the enemy with their mind powers, or just full-on mind bullets with a really strong psychic attack.
Clan Moulder Psyker. So my first reaction was, Clan Moulder doesn't have psykers. They make monsters, they construct beings. But that's just stupid. Of course, if they have a ratling that has psychic powers, they're gonna use it. They're gonna say, hey, this guy fights with his head. What if he had 2 heads or 3 heads or anything like that? So I'm gonna start now with this Genestealer Cult's hybrid acolytes hybrids, because he comes with a nice robe, and wizards wear robes. So this is the torso and the legs. He has space for 1 arm on this side, 2 arms on that side. So of course I'm gonna make him grow a tentacle or an arm or something. But a wizard comes with a staff, and these staffs from the Plague Monks I think are perfect for him. So I'm gonna give him this arm here, because also it has a little rat coming out, and I have this idea that maybe this guy is just summoning a massive swarm of rats that is going towards the enemy. You know, this warp vortex that Andy talks about, some sort of ranged area attack, could be just a swarm of rats. But this staff, it's a little bit bland, and there's no high-tech bits on it, so I'm just gonna snip off this top part, clean that up a bit, and then I'm gonna add a piece from the actual Dark Commune, and I believe this is from the actual caster from the Dark Commune. It's a really nasty mutated head on this sort of high-tech spike, and I think I can just put this on here. So a quick dry fit with some poster putty. I think this looks pretty cool. I think I can make this work, and it's pretty stable as well. So I think it needs some cables or something, some chain maybe hanging off there. Just something to make it look a little bit more 40k. But I like the rat, I like the head. Maybe that's where the mind bullets are coming from. Now, for the other side, I'm going to the Storm Vermin sprue, because I've got this pointing hand, which is of course perfect for a wizard casting a spell. And I got this hand over here with just a little dagger. And I think it makes sense for a caster. You know, the Mind Witch that comes with the actual Chaos Cult kill team doesn't have any weapons in his hand, but for a Skaven, you know, a little extra dagger makes a lot of sense. So a quick dry fit on this side as well. I want the pointing arm to be at the top and really pointing to the side, so you get a sort of view from this way. And the dagger arm is going underneath here, kind of hanging down like that. I think the dagger arm needs some trimming here. So I'm gonna cut off here this shoulder part, sharpen it a little bit so it becomes more of a point that I can fit under the other arm. And then he goes right there. Now the arms look a bit better, sort of the same length. There we go. We got a nice spellcasting wizard. Time to work on his heads. Now the storm vermin heads are almost all armored. They all have like a helmet or a blade on there, except for one, which comes without armor. And among the clan rats, let's see, where is he? They got this really nice head over here with these spikes sticking out. It has a little bit of a Clan Pestilence vibe, but I think you can get away with calling this Clan Moulder as well. So let me clean up these two heads and I'm gonna dry fit them. And I'm gonna take this more mutated head and put it on the side of the two arms. You know, that this side is mutating more than the other. And then the regular head goes on the other side. And it's okay if they stick out of the armor quite a bit, because it would give me opportunity to put some green stuff in there with a bit of warpstone. But like this, you got a nice two-headed psyker, looking both ways. So this guy manning the staff, this guy manning the two arms. I think I've got a decent psyker here. Let's glue it all together and then it's time to add some more 40k bits. Great. He's pretty much done with all the green stuff. I just want to make a place over here that's kind of bursting out of his armor where I can stick a bit of warpstone in there. So I'm just putting a glob of green stuff over here. Gotta smooth it out a little bit so make it look like it's some lump of flesh that is growing out of his armor and almost over his armor. And then it's time to make some warpstone. And I'm just getting this little piece of leftover sprue and I am sharpening the point into something of a gem size, gem shape. Ah, crap. I cut off the part that says Games Workshop Limited. Let me get a different piece. Right, different piece without text on it. I think that would look a bit weird on the warpstone. So I'm just sharpening this to a bit of a point. And then I cut off this piece, give it a little bit of, I don't know, body to sink into the green stuff quite deeply. Right there. Don't let it fly away. And I just press this into that lump of flesh that he has here. And it will bulge up the flesh around this warpstone and really make it look nice and nasty. There we go. Look at that. That looks nasty. And now I'm going to do the same with these failed mutants. And yeah, they look like really failed, awful kitbashes, but that's essentially what I want. Even though it might look weird on the table. But they need a little bit more green stuff. You know, this needs to be smoothed out and needs space for these lumps of warpstone as well. So my failed mutants, here they are ready now. He's got a bunch of warpstone in his shoulder and the green stuff is more spilling out and growing over him. And this guy as well, a little bit more smooth, a little bit better work, but still this sort of leaking flesh coming out of his armor. There's only one thing missing, I feel, is that these two arms that I have mutated properly, they are lacking a bit of armor. I mean, it's too bare. He's wearing chest armor and he's not wearing any shoulder pads. So I've got these shoulder plates here from the Berserkers, the World Eater Berserkers, and I just gotta scrape off the corn symbol. And then I can just glue this on top here. It also gives the opportunity to cover a bit of the shoulder socket because it's never a perfect fit. And this way it looks more like it actually works well. And I was thinking, I mean, I didn't scrape off the corn symbol completely. It makes sense that they got these weapons from somewhere. They clearly didn't make them themselves. And then the shoulder pads probably coming from the same place. And then it's time to paint. But I'm going to be really quick here. I'm just going to start with some Steel Legion drab, followed by a rough dry brush with some Rackard flesh. And the reason I say I'm going to be quick here is because I've painted already 13 other Skaven for this kill team. So if you really want to see exactly what I'm doing, you're better off watching that first part. You know, I don't want to do the same thing twice. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. A bit of typhus corrosion then on all of the metals and some dirty down rust for nice rust color. And I got this story now for these Twinblades, how they got so grotesque and such a failed mutation. See, if this kill team would just stumble upon a mortally wounded 8-bound, they would still ambush it, and despite that 8-bound killing 10, 20, 30 little rats, in the end he will be overcome. And then the Master Moulder looks at that and goes, hey, those are two nice massive blades, strong arms, let's graft them onto a little clan rat. But, you know, 8-bound, they are already warp infused. So what happens? everything goes horribly wrong. The arm stays, they can keep the shoulder pad, the nice big blade, but the rest of the Skaven, the little rat, he mutates horribly with lots of chaos corruption being called forth by the Warpstone. I think that's a good story for my Twinblades. And it would also explain why they have a Chaos Cultist hanging off their banner. And they've been fighting Chaos for a while now, and it makes sense. Warpstone and Chaos, they're pretty closely related, and wherever you find Chaos, you find Warpstone, and vice versa. I think that's a pretty good explanation for these little details in the kill team. The last paint, by the way, was Iron Warriors, and this paint here is some Stormhost Silver, and I'm using more metal paints on these guys than I've used on my Novitiates and the Mutants and the Torments and so on, because it makes the armor look a little bit newer, a little bit more pristine. And it's not that these guys take better care of their armor, of course not, they're Skaven, but these guys have the first pick whenever there's something new to loot and something new to steal. So it makes sense that their armor, usually stolen from people who care more about their armor than Skaven, that their armor looks a little bit better and a little bit newer, a little bit shinier than the armor of the weakest Skaven. Time for some Cadian flesh tone, just to pick out little bits of skin that might still be sort of healthy, not mutated too much. And there isn't a lot on these guys, but things like hands, like this one, like the hand looks like a Skaven, so I'm gonna paint this more of a Cadian flesh tone. All of the other parts of the skin, they're gonna be bright white, so I can later turn it into nice infected skin. And this way also, it's a way for me to set these guys apart from the Mutants and the Torments. They are, as you can see here, completely mutated and completely bright infected skin. And well, these guys, they are leading the pack, so they can't be completely gone, right? You can't have a rat ogre in charge of a kill team. You need some Skaven, some rat essence still to be there in the leader. And so these guys, they have a little bit of both. Some of this infected, nasty, mutated skin and some of the more natural Skaven skin. Yeah, look at that nice, nasty, infected skin and how well it contrasts with sort of the Skaven skin that's still there. Now, if you want to see exactly how I did this, you should check part 1 of this Skaven Kill Team series of 2 videos. I used the Carrion Crimson, Collier Greenshade and Ichor of the Damned from Villainy Inks range from the Grimdark Compendium. It's a fantastic set of enamels. If you're into enamels, I highly recommend it. And now it's time for the Warpstone and sort of these horns that are mutating out of the heads and so on. And my Warpstone, in this case, it's going to be bright orange. And the reason I'm doing orange is because I want to have a bit of a blunt shih tzu paint scheme. I want no blues, no greens in here, just warm colors. So normally Warpstone, of course, bright green and sort of glowing. I'm going for more like a glass, like an orange sort of irradiated stone, maybe a little bit of uranium cake idea. I don't know, but yeah, orange it is. And a bit of diluted spirit stone red will give it a nice glossy glow, so it starts looking like chunks of glass. And then all they need is a little bit of fresh blood, zombie gore from 2 thin coats, just around these chunks of warpstone to make it look like the skin is never gonna heal. And after I put them on some simple rubble bases, these specialists look like this. And I think they look pretty cool. You got the Master Moulder, the leader of the team, big, bulky brute, but not so nasty that he has become a rat ogre. He still has that very Skaven aspect. The head is still normal Skaven, the legs still are Skaven, but he has enhanced himself a bit. He has this over-the-head implements as an apothecary to put shards of warpstone into his specimens. He has a nice flamer to either shoot at his enemies or blow some warp dust onto his buddies to make them mutate and turn them into nasty monsters. I like him, and he has these 2 twin blades that come with them. I'm still not 100% sure if this is what I set out to do, but I think the story behind them is pretty cool, like an exalted 8-bound or a regular 8-bound being ambushed by this kill team and ripped apart for bits, and then infusing those parts with warpstone leads to horrible, horrible chaos mutations in the rats. It's a nice story to tell, and I think it's a good way to kitbash or to proxy these twin blades for the chaos cults. Now we've got the banner bearer. I like him. The banner is really tall, very high, but that's also the case with the Dark Commune. And I just like the scarecrow aspect of it. This body of a chaos cultist that is somehow still kept alive and suffering on that banner to debuff the enemies and to also inspire their own Clan Moulder rats to great deeds. And finally, the sorcerer. Like I said, when I was kitbashing him, it felt wrong to add a sorcerer, a psyker, to a Clan Moulder kill team But yeah, it just makes sense. Some of them are born with psychic powers, and of course they're not just gonna throw them away or cull these rats. They're gonna make nasty monsters out of them with multiple heads. More heads, more psychic powers, of course. And now these guys can join my devotees, my mutants, and my big ass rat ogres, the torments. And I finally have a kill team ready to play. And can anybody recommend a good kill team channel where I can learn about rules and so on, and interactions and gotchas of my enemies? Well, maybe Andy knows one. And if you enjoyed this video, join the Discord. There's lots of kitbash help, lots of work in progress. It's becoming a nice little community. I've got a Patreon if you want to support me, and affiliate links in the description below for some of the bits and pieces I've used. And in the meantime, check out this video next.